Hey everyone, welcome back to Mimi Horror Stories. Tonight, we're bringing you another episode of spine-tingling horror tales set against the calming sound of rain to help you relax and drift off to sleep. So, get comfortable, hit that like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. It was a foggy night in Elmore, Ohio, and I was driving home from a late shift at work. The mist was so thick that it felt like it was pressing in on me from all sides, and the headlights barely cut through the gloom. As I drove down a particularly deserted stretch of road, I saw a figure ahead. At first, I thought it was just another biker out for a late-night ride, but as I got closer, I realized something was terribly wrong. The figure appeared to be a motorcyclist, but there was no head, just a helmet-less neck where his head should have been. I could hardly believe my eyes. I slowed down, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The headless motorcyclist seemed to be moving slowly, almost as if he was searching for something. I felt a chill run down my spine as I watched him ride through the fog, his bike cutting through the mist with an eerie silence. I stopped my car, unsure of what to do. I knew the legend of the headless motorcyclist of Elmore, a ghostly rider said to haunt the roads, searching endlessly for his lost head. The stories claimed that he appeared on foggy nights like this one, and then vanished back into the mist. As I watched, the headless figure seemed to dissolve into the fog, his motorcycle disappearing as if swallowed by the night. I was left sitting there, shaken and bewildered. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but the sight of that headless rider was all too real. When I got home, I looked up the local legend and found out that I wasn't alone. Many people had reported seeing the same spectral motorcyclist, always under similar conditions on foggy nights when the mist made everything look otherworldly. To this day, that night remains one of the most unnerving experiences I've ever had. The foggy roads of Elmore hold more than just shadows. They carry the haunting presence of a rider forever searching for something he can never find. It was a cool spring evening when I first heard about the ghost on Archer Road in Illinois. I'd heard the stories about a young woman in a prom dress who supposedly appeared to drivers, asking for a ride and then disappearing when they reached her destination. Naturally, I was skeptical, but curiosity got the better of me. One night, I decided to take a drive down Archer Road just to see if there was any truth to the tale. The road was quiet, and the moonlight cast eerie shadows through the trees. I had just started to think the stories were just that, stories, when I saw her. She was standing by the side of the road, wearing a beautiful but tattered prom dress. Her appearance was so out of place that I slowed down to make sure she was okay. As I pulled up beside her, she looked at me with a sad expression and asked if I could give her a ride home. She provided an address that wasn't too far off, so I agreed. We chatted a bit during the drive. She seemed polite but distant, and there was something otherworldly about her. As we approached the address she had given me, I noticed she was getting more and more quiet. When we arrived, she thanked me and started to get out of the car. Just as I was about to ask if she needed any further assistance, she vanished. It was like she was there one moment and gone the next. I sat there stunned, trying to process what had just happened. I got out of the car and checked around, but there was no sign of her anywhere. The house she had given me was dark and appeared empty. When I got home, I did some research and found out that the story of the ghostly prom dress wearing woman on Archer Road was well known in the area. Many others had reported similar experiences, with the woman asking for a ride and disappearing when they reached her destination. That night remains etched in my memory, a chilling reminder that sometimes the legends we hear might have a kernel of truth, and Archer Road is a place where those tales come to life. I'll never forget my drive down Bluebell Hill on that foggy evening. It was one of those nights where the mist seemed to cling to everything, making it hard to see very far ahead. I was just trying to get home after a long day when I saw something that made my blood run cold. As I rounded a bend, I saw a figure standing in the middle of the road. At first, I thought it might be a person in trouble, but as I got closer, I realized it was a woman in a flowing white dress. She looked like a bride, but there was something eerie about her appearance, almost ethereal. Instinctively, I swerved to avoid hitting her, and my heart was pounding in my chest. I glanced in my rearview mirror, expecting to see her standing there, but she was gone. I pulled over to the side of the road, trying to catch my breath, and figure out what I had just seen. I got out of my car and looked around, but there was no sign of the woman. The road was completely empty, and the fog was rolling in thicker than ever. I searched the area for a while, but she was nowhere to be found. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Later, when I shared my experience with friends, they told me about the legend of the ghostly bride of Bluebell Hill. Apparently, many drivers have had similar encounters with the spectral bride who appears in the road, only to disappear when they stop to check. The story goes that she is a spirit of a bride who tragically died on that very road, and she now wanders there, forever trying to get to her wedding. Even now, whenever I drive down that stretch of road, I can't help but feel a chill, wondering if I might encounter the ghostly bride once again. I still remember the fear that gripped our small town back in the 1980s. It was a time when hitchhiking was common, and people didn't think twice about getting into a stranger's car. But then, the redhead murders began, and everything changed. It all started when the body of a young woman with red hair was found along a highway. At first, people thought it was an isolated incident, a tragic but random act of violence. But then another body was found, and then another. All young women, all with red or auburn hair, all abandoned along highways in different states. It was as if the killer was using the highways as their hunting ground, picking up hitchhikers or women in vulnerable situations, and then discarding their bodies like trash. The pattern was chilling, and the media soon dubbed the unknown perpetrator the redhead killer. Law enforcement from multiple states tried to piece together the puzzle. They interviewed witnesses, followed leads, and compared notes, but the killer was always one step ahead. It was like trying to catch a ghost. Some believed the murderer was a truck driver, using their job as a cover to travel across the country and commit these heinous acts without raising suspicion. For the families of the victims, the pain was unbearable. Their daughters, sisters, and mothers were gone, and they had no answers, no justice. Every new body found along a highway only deepened the sense of dread. It could happen anywhere to anyone. As time passed, the frequency of the murders seemed to decrease, but the fear never fully went away. Even now, decades later, people still talk about the redhead murders with a sense of unease. The case remains unsolved, a dark chapter in our history that serves as a grim reminder of the dangers that once lurked along our highways. So, if you ever find yourself traveling those lonely stretches of road, remember the stories of those young women. Be cautious, be aware, and never forget that the redhead killer was never caught. I still get chills when I think back to the fall of 2002. It was a terrifying time to be living around the Washington, D.C. area. I remember the constant fear that gripped the community, a fear that came from not knowing where or when the next attack would occur. This was the time of the Beltway snipers. It started in October, and the randomness of the attacks made it even more horrifying. The snipers, later identified as John Allen Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo, would shoot their victims from a distance with a high-powered rifle, usually while the victims were doing everyday activities like pumping gas, shopping, or mowing the lawn. They turned the most mundane tasks into potential death traps. I remember vividly how everyone in the area was on edge. You couldn't go about your day without constantly looking over your shoulder. Gas stations put up tarps around their pumps to provide some semblance of cover, and people would crouch behind their cars while fueling up, hoping to avoid being an easy target. Schools went into lockdown mode, and outdoor activities were canceled. It felt like we were living in a war zone. The scariest part was the complete lack of a pattern in the locations and victims. The snipers would shoot someone in one county and then strike miles away the next day. They even left cryptic notes at some of the crime scenes, demanding money and making threats, which only added to the chaos and fear. The media was all over it, and every day brought news of another attack, another victim. I remember the collective sigh of relief we all breathed when the snipers were finally caught at a rest stop in Maryland. It turned out that Muhammad, a former Army marksman, had converted the trunk of his Chevrolet Caprice into a mobile sniper's nest, with a small hole cut out to fire from. In total, they killed 10 people and critically injured 3 others. The motive behind the shootings was convoluted. involving personal vendettas and a plan to extort money from the government. Muhammad was sentenced to death and executed in 2009, while Malvo, being a minor at the time of the killings, received life sentences without parole. Those few weeks in 2002 left an indelible mark on all of us who lived through it. The Beltway snipers turned our daily routines into nightmares, and the terror they inflicted is something I'll never forget. Even now, over 2 decades later, I still find myself getting uneasy when I'm out and about. A reminder of the days when a trip to the gas station could have been my last. I'll never forget that night I drove down Route 491. It was a stretch of road that had a reputation for being a little eerie, especially since it used to be known as Route 666. It was late, and the darkness seemed to stretch on forever, with only my headlights cutting through the night. As I drove, I noticed a pair of headlights behind me, coming up fast. I thought it was just another car trying to overtake, but the headlights were growing closer at an alarming rate. I glanced at my speedometer and saw I was already going well over the limit. Still, the car behind me was gaining ground rapidly. I could see the outline of a black sedan, and it looked like it was trying to intimidate me with its high beams and closed tailgating. My heart was racing as I tried to speed up, but no matter how fast I went, the phantom car stayed right on my bumper. It felt like a high-stakes chase, with the sedan closing in on me relentlessly. Just when I thought I couldn't handle the pressure any longer, the sedan seemed to abruptly disappear. I looked in my rearview mirror, and it was like it had vanished into thin air. The road behind me was empty. I pulled over to the side, my hands trembling, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I later learned that others had similar experiences on Route 491, and many believe it's haunted by a phantom vehicle. Some say it's the spirit of a driver who met a tragic end on the road and now roams, chasing down those who dare to drive through. Even now, when I think back to that night, it sends shivers down my spine. Route 491 is known for its ghost stories, and my encounter with the phantom car was a reminder that some legends might be rooted in something more real than we'd like to believe. It was a crisp autumn evening when I decided to take a drive down Seven Sisters Road in Nebraska. I'd heard the stories about it being haunted, but I never really believed in ghosts. Still, something about the legend intrigued me, so I figured I'd see for myself. The road was narrow and surrounded by dense woods, and the evening light was fading fast. As I drove, I noticed how quiet it was, eerily quiet. It was almost as if the world had stopped making noise. Then, out of nowhere, I saw them, a group of 7 children, dressed in old-fashioned clothing, standing by the side of the road. They looked like they were waiting for something, their faces pale and expressionless. I slowed down, my curiosity getting the better of me. The kids didn't move, they just stared ahead. Feeling uneasy but concerned, I stopped my car and rolled down the window to ask if they needed help. As I did, the children started to slowly walk towards the car. That's when I noticed something unsettling. Their feet were barely touching the ground. It was like they were gliding rather than walking. Before I could react, the kids vanished into the woods, disappearing as suddenly as they had appeared. I got out of the car and looked around, but there was no sign of them. The forest was dark and silent, with no trace of the children or any indication of where they might have gone. That night left me with a chill that hasn't gone away. Seeing those ghostly figures in the middle of nowhere made me question everything I thought I knew about the supernatural. Seven Sisters Road had proven to be more than just a spooky tale. It was a place where the past and present seemed to collide in the most unsettling ways. It was a clear, calm night when I decided to take a drive down Riverdale Road in Colorado. I had heard rumors about it being haunted, but I wasn't sure if I believed them. Still, I was curious to see if there was any truth to the tales. The road was isolated, with only a few streetlights casting dim circles of light on the pavement. As I drove, the eerie stillness of the area began to set a tense mood. The trees lining the road seemed to close in, creating a tunnel of shadows. Then, things started to get strange. I noticed a shadowy figure running alongside my car. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light or my imagination, but the figure was clear, a spectral jogger who seemed to keep pace with me no matter how fast I drove. Feeling a mix of fear and fascination, I slowed down to get a better look. The figure was a man in old-fashioned running gear, his form transparent and flickering as if he was struggling to remain visible. I could see through him, and he appeared to be running in place, as though trapped in a loop. I decided to pull over and investigate. As I stepped out of my car, the figure stopped and looked directly at me with an expression of sadness and longing. Before I could react, he faded away into the darkness of the trees. I looked around but found no trace of him or any sign of where he might have gone. Back home, I learned more about the legend of Riverdale Road. The story spoke of a ghostly jogger who had died in a tragic accident while running along that road. Now, he's said to run alongside unsuspecting drivers, forever trapped in his final moments. That night on Riverdale Road left me with a profound sense of unease. It was as if I had glimpsed a piece of the past that refused to fade away. The haunted jogger had shown me that some roads hold more than just memories, they hold echoes of lost souls, forever bound to their tragic fates.